Well, if you're interested in psycho-spiritual wholeness and Jung and ideas around meaning making and the sacred, I think you're really going to like this conversation that I'm sharing with you today that I had with Tony Caldwell, who is a Jungian analyst based in Nashville, Tennessee. I know Tony through the Hayden Institute work that I've been doing for several years, and he's a wonderful speaker and just such a lovely person. And in this conversation, we talked about collective shadow, we talked about place, race, ideologies, and personal mythologies. We talked about the psychic energy that can be held in the shadow and what we don't know about ourselves. And we talked about libido and what drives us as humans and our creativity. We talked about the process of Jungian analysis a little bit in terms of things like transference and counter-transference and how those things are so important to the analytic relationship. We talked a little bit about developmental approach, developmental psychology, and an approach that draws from that within the Jungian community. And then in part two of this conversation, we got a lot into meaning making and how we can begin to be the translators of our own experience and make the meaning of that experience versus just accepting the inherited meanings we were given by people around us. And then finally, we talked about finding the sacred in our wounds. And so I hope that you'll stay for this whole conversation and enjoy it as much as I enjoyed having it. So welcome to the sacred everywhere. Welcome to the sacred everywhere. I'm Dr. Sheri Kling, and in this space we explore how the sacred shows up in real life, in our questions, our struggles, our longing, and our hope. Can we find the sacred in every place and everyone? Let's see. All right. Well, welcome, Tony Caldwell, to the Sacred Everywhere. So good to have you here with me.
Thank you, Sherry. It's always great to spend time with you.
Well, thank you. Um, we've known each other a little while, mostly through the Hayden Institute. And I referenced the Hayden Institute and have referenced it in multiple podcasts. So people are probably beginning to be a little bit more familiar with it by now. And I'm not sure how long ago, but several years ago that we first met. And you've had an interesting journey. You've recently become a Jungian analyst. I mean, I know
Mhm.
you were a psychotherapist before that. But if you could just maybe start with a little bit about your journey, and you can include anything about faith and spirituality, but what journey took you to making this decision to becoming an analyst in your
Yeah,
practice?
yeah. I was initially drawn before I even knew who Jung was, much less had read him and thought about being an analyst. I was drawn to what I didn't have language for at the time, but I would now call collective shadow.
Mm,
In
mm,
my home state where I grew up in Mississippi, just there's so much unresolved and unhealed there,
mm,
just due to history and
right.
circumstance. And I think that's why there's so many parts of the country where there's not a Jungian analyst. But when I decided to train, there were two active and four of us training. You know,
Really? And it from
now,
Mississippi.
yeah, now that we
Wow.
finished training, one moved to Memphis, which is just right over the border. Um, and so now that makes roughly six of us.
Uh-huh.
And you wouldn't expect that. Now that I'm in Nashville, I'm the only one here. And
Right.
uh, the analyst that I train with that moved to Memphis is there with another analyst who's been there. So there's two in Memphis and me in Nashville,
Hmm.
and had one in Knoxville. He just retired.
Okay.
So it's funny that we have more in Mississippi than in Tennessee.
That is wild.
Yeah, yeah, and in a lot of other parts of the country.
Yeah.
I think also there's a real hotbed for, I would say, per capita, by far the most analysts in the U.S. is in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Really?
So
Huh.
there's obviously it's a power spot for
Yeah,
some reason. Yeah, I think roughly 20 analysts in that small town.
that's
It's
crazy.
crazy. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Have that many in New York City. Yeah, it's just
Right, right. Wow. I know it's a very attractive place to be for people who are interested, I guess, in growth and personal growth, spirituality. But I mean, I'm curious, do they maintain a practice through doing basically now Zoom or, the equivalent of distance practices, not just local?
Yeah, I'm sure that's mixed in, but the last I spoke with someone at a conference last year, there was actually an analyst driving up from Albuquerque to help meet the demand for analysis in Santa Fe, in addition to the ones who were there. So I really do
Wow.
feel like I know I'm kind of it seems like I'm going off from your original question, but I think what I'm getting at is I think there's a real sense of the importance of place when it comes to analytic work, whether
Hmm.
that's history, culture, or a certain combination of people who decide they're interested in depth psychology.
Yeah.
But yeah, it seems like place matters. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, the whole collective shadow thing for me is about place.
Mm.
And so that's where the overlap came for me. And
Yeah.
I'd also really struggled for a while. I actually took a break from training, and I remember during that break I was taking theology classes in Sewanee, and I ran into you in the cafe there.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but it was a real struggle. Which path do I take? And that's real
Uh-huh.
common. A lot of people who decided to become analysts that were clergy in the first half of life.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and so Jung even wrote a piece called "A Psychotherapist or the Clergy," because
Mm.
it's such similar work in some ways.
Right. Dealing with
Yeah,
people's depths and the depths of our experience, which that's at our depths where we encounter the sacred.
yeah, yeah,
So
and
it's
it's
not a
a way of
surprise in many
working.
ways.
Yeah, it's a way of working with the psyche that overlaps with spiritual direction more than clinical mental health in a lot of ways.
Mm.
Yeah, and so to become an analyst, you have to first be a licensed mental health professional with a terminal clinical degree in your field.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
But the work after becoming an analyst is way less clinical for me, because I'm not necessarily interested in diagnosing someone with a particular disorder when this way of working considers our symptoms to not necessarily be pathology, but to be attempts at correction or balance within
Right.
the psyche's attempts at getting our attention, the
Right.
attention of the conscious ego to get it involved in, working with instead of trying to get rid of whatever's going on inside
Yeah.
of us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I took that break for a while and explored theology, and I made the right decision because my history with religion has been that I'm fascinated by and love and could spend endless hours studying theology and sacred literature, but I I'm feral. I can't stay in boxes. I'm a free range human,
Yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah, and I just this is the perfect work for me because I do get to have my own nest
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Mm-hmm.
and be me independent of any bureaucracy or
Yeah.
organization. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I relate so much to that, and that's such a great way to put it, that being a feral human. Because, that's why I went the academic route and not the ministry route. But ironically, I actually now am currently serving a church as interim minister, but it was not what I intended for that very reason. I just never wanted to be butting heads with bishops, and you know, I couldn't feel comfortable in the box either. And ultimately, I think that's why I've recognized that this isn't my long-term path. And as much as it has been a gift to be doing this work in this period of time,
Mhm.
over 2.5 years now actually it's coming to an end at the end of August because my other work is now going to be full time and stuff like that. So
Okay.
it's there's a change happening now, but it's for that very reason. So that's a great way
Yeah.
to put it. It's just
Yeah.
when you're more when you're more wide ranging in your interests and
Mm.
curiosity and always looking for truth, no matter who that threatens, which
Right.
I would say that's kind of one of the quests I'm on.
Yeah.
Even if it threatens my own belief structure or somebody else's, I want the truth. And when you're that kind of person, you don't always do well in the boxes and the
Right.
bureaucracies
It make
because you make
it,
too many people mad.
at the very least, it makes you a better guest speaker than like full-time
Right,
le community leader. Yeah.
right,
Yeah. Yeah.
right. Now,
Yep.
when did you make the move? I know it wasn't that long ago, but some years ago that you moved from Mississippi to Nashville.
Yeah, I moved here in 2019 and
Okay.
spent roughly the first year here. The pandemic happened, the
Right.
lockdown happened not long after we moved here.
Mm-hmm.
That was a very interesting chapter in our lives.
Yeah.
We didn't know which part of town we wanted to live in, so we actually moved into a very tiny place in a high rise temporarily, so we could just spend our time when we're not at work exploring neighborhoods and deciding what walk neighborhoods and what feels like home.
Yeah.
But we ended up there for 2 years because of the pandemic, and it was so interesting being on the 16th floor of a building and just working on Zoom. And our child was in school at the time, and he was doing school on Zoom, and it was
Yeah.
just really. I know everyone had their experience of it, but it was given that we had just moved there, moved into this tiny space, and it was a very bizarre time.
Yeah. Kind of
Yeah,
surreal when you think
yeah.
about it.
And we had the full Nashville effect too, because some musicians that we love were living on that same floor. And
Really.
that's just kind of a thing that kind of happens here. But yeah, we moved in, and then not long after, our new neighbor across the hall moved in. It was India Ari,
Oh,
the
wow.
lead singer. Yeah,
Yeah.
and she was super nice and would give our child like these mint Kit Kats. And but anyway, it was just this bizarre time, and I didn't really get to be in Nashville, like really live here until 2021 when we moved to where we are now in East Nashville. And
Hmm.
the first night we were there, it just became home. You know,
Wow.
yeah, the neighbors were so tight because there had been two tornadoes come through in the few previous years.
Hmm.
So everyone really got to know one another. And when we were moving in, there was a sort of block party, and that was our first night there. And it's just been home ever
Wow.
since. Yeah.
Wow. That's so great. And I think, we're in some respects, we're all looking for that. We're all looking for the kind of neighborhood that feels like that. And many of us don't get that. We don't find that. And I think it's really beautiful that you did.
Yeah. Yeah. It's another place where a place is important, and it's
Hmm.
so important that it became part of the topic for my thesis in analytic training. And then I'm
Uh-huh.
also working on a project with a songwriter here that's really into Jung, and I'm an analyst that's really into music. And
Mhm.
we sat together and thought, okay, we're going to collaborate. What do we have in common? And so I sent him my thesis, and he sent me his, and they were both about place.
Wow. Oh,
So
interesting.
it just keeps coming up. So it's obviously a
Yeah.
part of my work in this life is to wrestle with place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you were talking earlier about collective shadow and place, what immediately came to my mind was years ago when I was still living in Marietta, Georgia, a group from my church took a bus trip. One of our members had been a teacher, and then she started a company where she would lead historical tours for schools. But she took a group of us, adults, and we went to Warm Springs, Georgia, where Franklin Roosevelt, had a home and was being treated with his polio. And we went to Jimmy Carter's, to Plains, to Jimmy Carter's home, and actually went to his Sunday school class at his church.
Wow.
And then in between, we went to Andersonville, the the prisoner of war camp during the Civil War,
Mm,
where they held the, northern troops.
hmm
And so drove the bus around, and the guide told us all about the place and what had happened there. And it was just a horrific, it's known for just being this horrific place, not solely the fault of the Confederate armies that ran it, but because of lack of being sent enough food and supplies and
hmm
all kinds of problems.
Yeah.
But anyway, there's also a POW museum there. And so when we then went to the museum and the rest of our group was in the museum, I stepped out onto a patio that faced the main field of this camp. And
Mm,
it was like by myself, and I could feel the sadness still in that
mm,
place. It just
yeah.
like oozed out of the ground.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about collective shadow and place, can't explain how and why this happens, but it does seem that grief or suffering or whatever it is can actually
Yeah.
sort of seep into a place.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's why one of Mississippi's many nicknames is the most storied place.
Hmm.
And then, there's also the sense of Mississippi as the or the South really being considered the Christ haunted South,
Hmm.
place in which the overlap between, human tragedies that were, you know, acts of acts of man, not acts of God,
Right.
that were perpetrated while sort of under the at least the ideological umbrella of Christianity. And so
Mm-hmm.
those two things overlapping in a
Yeah.
way that really hasn't fully been separated. I did a co-led a research project for the Kellogg Foundation
Hmm.
back in 2018, and it was meant to be um, sort of a recreation of Sunday mornings. Basically, we had a white group and a black group because that's the most segregated time
Right.
as a Sunday morning, right?
Right.
Because we're working together and our neighbors, but tend not to, go to a house of worship together. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and that's less and less true, but it's still pretty true. And so our task was to form these affinity groups and talk about the other group,
Hmm.
because that's sort of what people do, right? You talk to who
Right.
you're community with, and it's not those people, whoever those people are.
Right.
Uh, and so it was really interesting because then we would meet as a large group. There were 18 people in each group. So then we'd have a 36-person large group. And this was a project that went on for months. And you had to dedicate to an extended, it was a big ask of the participants. And then
Mm-hmm.
we would have paired interviews where random people from each group would meet up and
Mm-hmm.
record their conversation.
Wow.
And some of the conversations that were had were just amazing.
Ah.
And you just see how, and I think it's a great thing that to be looking at now, how individuals get caught up in the collective,
Mm-hmm.
and whether that's, sort of being possessed by the sort of current state of a given group, but
Mm-hmm.
also the nuance of what's really going on inside of people within a group that we may assume is not there.
Right.
Because within 5 minutes, the major complaint among the white group, especially for people who are currently in their 60s and 70s, people who were around during the time of the desegregation of schools, and,
Mm-hmm.
and and remember what life was like before that happened, and also
Right.
the struggle for that to happen, because the Brown versus Board of Education was 1954, and the last
Right.
school to integrate in Mississippi was in 1970 by
Wow.
court, by force.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And so it was a long drawn out process, and a lot of white flight into like what they call Christian schools or faith-based schools, but they're mostly white flight schools
Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
most part. Yeah. And so anyway, the major complaint among the people from that age group from that time was I was a child that saw everything that was going on and felt everything that was going on, but I couldn't bring it up. If I brought it
Mm.
up, I would get in trouble. That
Mm-hmm.
was kind
Mm-hmm.
of, there was a sense of it's talking about it is worse than the fact that it's happening.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we just see that throughout human history in so many times and places.
Yeah.
Yeah, where it's to speak the unspeakable is not the act, but the speaking about the act. It's such,
Right.
it just plays into another reason why depth psychology and Jung have been so important to me because that's what defense mechanisms do, and that's
Yeah.
on the individual and the group level. And
Mm-hmm.
it's human dynamics, in the South and in the US, it's obviously about race, but these things have played out across history based on ideology and religion and
Yeah.
ethnicity and for so many different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's
Wow.
unfortunately a, a part of human nature.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That your research with the affinity groups and all reminds me a little bit of Jeremy Taylor's work when he was a conscientious objector to the Vietnam War, and his alternative service was working in Oakland, California, and that's when he started doing dream groups, and he was, I don't know if he called them anti-racism groups, but that was sort of one of the goals.
Hmm.
And how effective he talked about it being, that when they worked their dreams and they were able to talk through shadow figures in the dreams and how people of color or white people showed up in each other's dreams, and
Hmm.
it allowed them to talk and bring to the surface a lot of their, hidden agendas, or the repressed beliefs and complexes and stuff that they had, that were causing them to have certain biases or whatever, and how
Yeah.
it opened up so much and
Yeah.
really shifted things for those people.
Yeah. I know there are exceptions to it, unfortunately, but it's been my experience when you put people who might have certain views of one another uh, in the same place, they end up learning to love and appreciate each other so much of the time.
Yeah.
Like I've seen so many families that would say racist things, but when they wound up with a black grandchild, it melted away.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And another thing that struck me recently about how ideology works is, my maternal grandfather was very much into the Civil War and sort of um, um, a historian, not formally,
Mm-hmm.
but that was
Yeah.
his major. That's how he spent his time when he wasn't working,
Mm-hmm.
collecting artifacts, and certain parts of his house were like a shrine in a way. It was just like memorabilia everywhere, and um, bullets and um,
Wow.
guns and different, things that were used during the war, and pictures of people in his bloodline that were in the war, that were
Mm-hmm.
part of the Confederacy, and so unfortunately that came along with hearing him dropping racial slurs and things a lot when I
Yeah.
was a kid. But
Right.
he has dementia now.
Uh-huh.
He's forgotten that part of himself.
Really?
It is so amazing. The ideology and the slurs and everything are gone
Wow.
along with memory. And
Yeah.
it's just so striking that we are just so incredibly socialized.
Yes.
And that's what individuation is looking at our socialization and who we might be underneath it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, gosh, I remember, I think I was around 10 years old. My mom, uh, one of her really good friends, that we would get together and go to plays and stuff like that.
Hmm.
I'm struggling to remember. I think it might have been her brother that married a black woman, and their parents completely disowned him.
Hmm.
And even with his having children, I think they still would not allow them in their lives. Maybe
Yeah.
later they did, but I remember thinking, wow, it really made an impression on me at that
Right.
age. And there was even some of that, like when I was a senior in high school. Well, oh my gosh, I was raised in New Jersey, and we had a lot of racial difficulty where I grew up. It was, back in 68 when the riots occurred in Newark, they kind of trickled down to Elizabeth and Linden and Roselle a little bit. And so there was a lot of pain and struggle, just in the ether there. And I was bullied a lot as a kid
Mm,
and and struggled myself with issues around race.
mhm.
And
Because you were a minority in that setting.
it was probably equal. It was
Yeah.
probably a 50-50 setting,
Yeah.
50-50 split kind of a setting. And the way they did some weird things with the schools, like they integrated the schools when I was in the second grade, which meant that they brought kids from like way the other side of town and spread them
Mhm.
out across the other elementary schools. But then like there were five elementary schools in town, four of which went through the seventh grade, one of which went only through the sixth grade. And then the
Mm.
high school started in the eighth grade. So the school that only went to the sixth grade was the one in the black neighborhood. So all those kids for their last year were suddenly shoved into a brand new school, which, I mean, that's just a recipe for disaster right from the
Right.
get-go. And but yeah, it was really a rough time. I was threatened a lot, and
Mhm.
it was just a nutty atmosphere.
Yeah. It's
Um,
it shows how much of that sort of thing is about group dynamics.
yeah.
I was talking to someone this morning who is around 70 years old, but when he was a child, he moved from Germany to Sweden. And so he was a dark-haired, dark-eyed
Huh.
child, fair-skinned, light-haired, blue-eyed children, and he never fully integrated. He was
Wow.
always an outsider. And then I've had a couple of different clients through the years who are white that grew up in Mexico due to family business or a parent's job, and were the minority and were had a terrible experience.
Yeah.
So it just you see it in ideology with politics and religion, but the sense of a desire for sameness
Mm-hmm.
and pushing out whatever might be quote different.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things that, like you said, that I've noticed is when people talk to each other and recognize their common humanness, and whether that's common fears or common worries or common uh, joys, it just changes things, and
Mm,
it's that exposure that we don't often have that seems to
right.
be. And I have also found that through the arts is often such an important way to bring
Hmm.
empathy forward because people are then immersed in a story in a way that brings out their own empathy.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was a big part of my own journey.
Really.
Yeah, like it was. Well, I remember, when I left, I won't make this too long, but in my high school, there were murals in the auditorium, and some of them were quite old and from like the 40s with the armed forces and, other kind of civic life uh,
Hmm.
things. But then there was one with Martin Luther King, and it was like a thing that it was there was
Yeah.
grumbling about that. And so and because of my experience, I had sort of negative associations. And then I went to college, I went to Purdue, but it wasn't like I didn't have a completely negative experience. I also had friends who were black, and so it was a
Right.
mixed experience. But
Yeah.
when I went to Purdue, then for whatever class, I remember listening to Martin Luther King speeches and being really affected by them. And
Hmm.
then much later, seeing movies like uh, Bamboozled, which is that also a Spike Lee? But I did also see one of his other, I forget the name of it now. Anyway, I think it was those two Spike Lee
Yeah.
movies. Reading
Probably
Jesus and
Get on the Bus or Crooklyn or
It was oh gosh, it'll come to me in the middle of nowhere, of course. But anyway, it, those kinds of things and reading certain texts and poetry. I mean, it's those things that really brought forward, a recognition of shared humanness and empathy and all of
right.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're enjoying this conversation, I'd invite you to download my free guide, Awakening to the Sacred: 5 Keys to Experiencing the Divine. I hope to, in this guide, help you to unlock a more joyful, creative and spirit-filled life, especially if you're hungry for a spiritual life that feels real. So check out the show notes and click on the link below to access that free guide. Thanks. So I encourage your work with the musician around, not, I know it may not just be around race, but just around place and collective shadow. The arts is, I think, are key to shifting these kinds
Yeah,
of things.
yeah. He's from Germany originally, and
Hmm.
so we're both transplants here. And yeah, it's a lot about place as a not necessarily geographical location, but also our own personal mythologies of what we say our place is or what we consider our place to be.
Yeah.
And yeah, what I think what we've been talking about for the past few minutes is splitting,
Hmm.
and that's what it looks like on the collective culture. And splitting is so often what's addressed in analysis when we're splitting internally,
Right.
which is create shadow. And so shadow
Hmm.
integration is reintegrating the things we've split off and deny or and I've found through the years that the shadow is not always all of the bad stuff or the shameful stuff, but it includes everything that's not allowed.
Right.
So a lot of our largeness and our parts of our personality that would draw attention that we might not be comfortable with, and
Hmm.
talents that we hide, and you
Yeah.
know, yeah, the voice that we don't feel comfortable having out loud, but all these really positive things, the shadow
Hmm.
is just full of the things that haven't been allowed expression yet.
Right.
So there's
Right.
so much good stuff in there too.
Yeah. Yeah. Like that term bright shadow, kind
Yeah.
of can refer to.
Hmm.
And there's the idea that what we keep in our shadow, unknown to us, often can be key to a lot of untapped energy and resources that, when we integrate, can actually spark a big burst of energy in us.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. That psychic energy that is, often referred to as libido. And that's a
Hmm.
place where many places where Ford and Jung um, didn't ever really land on the same page, but one of those is around psychic energy.
Hmm.
And Freud tended to consider libido to be purely sexual, and
Right.
for Jung, it was universal. It was
Hmm.
sexual, spiritual, relational, artistic,
Yeah.
but this desire to live, the
Right.
will to live in all the ways that we express that through
Hmm.
connection and art and music and yeah, community building, just
Right.
but an impulse towards life that's almost the opposite of Freud's notion of the death instinct, which he said
Yes.
there's some part of each of us that wishes to reduce us back to an inorganic state. That's a
Wow. Oh,
pretty
wow.
intense way of putting it, but
Yeah, that is intense.
yeah, this sort of refusal to live or desire to be disembodied to for the and some I think sometimes it's human suffering and it's the soul's desire to be released from
Right.
the body it's trapped in if they're having
Yeah.
that experience. Yeah, but yeah, I've that's another thing that makes Jung relevant for me is the sense of if when there's depression, what what exactly is that? I was
Hmm.
talking a while back to this. He's the head of the psychoanalysis psychology department at Trinity College Dublin, and
Hmm.
one of his Dr. John O'Connor, and one of his specialties or one of his research topics that he's most interested in is what he calls the re-ensoulment of mental health services.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that.
Yeah, where you don't necessarily throw away the medical model, but you also realize we are complex beings that can't be reduced to the medical model.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so much of that's been, due to insurance and that sort of thing.
Right.
Uh, yeah, it's been pretty much reduced to biology.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
it's
and
so frustrating.
yeah, and the need for brief therapies to get rid of what ails us so we can be productive again.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Pay as little as possible, for that patient
Yeah.
or client. Yeah. So where in your own life did you connect with Jung and just what analysis can do? Like what
Mhm.
really moved you in that direction in terms of why you wanted to do this kind of work?
Yeah. I found myself in 2004 and 2005 in grad school in Memphis and living there, but I was working for the Department of Human Services, like Child Protective Services, doing child abuse investigations
Mm,
in uh, northern Mississippi, just over the border from Memphis. Memphis and
mm.
North Mississippi are sort of one place. There's a invisible line there, but culturally and geographically, it's just that it really should be the capital of the northern part of Mississippi.
Wow.
Yeah. There's a musician, Jim Dickinson. He was from Mississippi and lived in Memphis, but he has a map in his old studio that shows his map of Memphis, and it's Memphis and a little part of the Arkansas Delta and all the way
Huh.
down to parts of the Mississippi Delta. But the culture definitely shifts in the Delta. It's its own thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, but anyway, so I found myself doing child abuse investigations there, and right on the state line road. It was literally one side of the street is Memphis, the other side is Mississippi. But there was this old uh, grocery store that had been converted into an antique mall,
Huh.
and so some of the booths would have used books on their shelves, and there was also a cafe in there, and I would sometimes stop in and eat and browse the books,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. So yeah, I put in my order and I browsed like the nearest booth and I saw man and his symbols on the
Yeah.
shelf. And I thought, what is this? And I opened it and flipped through it, and all I could think was, I'm so drawn to this, but I have no idea what this is saying.
Wow.
This is over my head, and hopefully one day it won't be.
Wow.
Yeah, so a little bit later, I realized that there was a Jungian analyst in North Mississippi in a little tiny town called Water Valley. Who
Huh.
would have thought?
Yeah. How
So I
how
called.
how symbolic Water Valley. It's
Yeah.
like in so many dreams, water can symbolize, the depths, the unconscious. So
Mhm.
that's kind of
Yeah,
interesting that it was called that.
yeah, and so many people's initial dreams that bring them into analysis involve water, and mine
Mm-hmm.
did. And
Hmm.
even later on, I had dreams that I eventually realized there were these pools of dark water that when the light hit it, it was blinding.
Mm.
It's at that point I actually switched to analyst and went to work with Stan Marlin, who wrote a book called The Black Sun,
Oh,
and
wow.
it's the light of the shining darkness, if you will, but the darkness that's so dark it refracts light.
Hmm.
And so yeah, I had this dream of this pool where that happened, and then one day I was driving to my analyst's house in Water Valley, who lived way down a curvy, windy country road, and that sort of blinding light hit me, and I
Huh.
went, "That is my dream image in real life." And
Whoa.
I had passed that and never thought about it, but it entered my subconscious in some way,
Yeah.
showed up there, and
Mm-hmm.
it took me back to my initial dreams, which were about these dark pools of water and very scary dreams. And that series of dreams went on for years and finally resolved. And it was interesting. The pools of water became larger, more clear, than it was moving water. And in the very last water dream I had in that series, uh, I was not alone like any other dreams, but I'd actually taken my wife and my son to this river that was completely transparent. You could see everything in it to
Wow.
show. And
Yeah.
there's so much about the resolution of mostly traumas, that
Mm-hmm.
I think bring in these dark water dreams that are
Yeah.
so symbolic. But yeah, so I started working with Ben, and Ben Tools his name, and He's in his 80s now, but he former clergy.
Uh-huh.
His uncle had been one of the jurors in the Emmett Till case.
Really?
He was from the area where that happened.
And what
And
what year was that again? 20?
Emmett Till,
Yeah.
I'm not sure what year that was,
Um,
but
anyway, I don't remember
he
now.
recalls his family owned a store, and he recalls being at the store, and at some point his uncle, and I'm not sure if this was part of when he was a child or how old he was when this happened, but he says he asked his uncle, like, why did you not find them guilty? And his uncle said to him, well, you know, it's not illegal to kill a blank,
Oh,
used a
uh,
racial slur. And so
yeah.
there's just part of the mentality, there. So Ben was so informed by all of that, and also, had his own wounding from being a Baptist minister who was drawn to Jung and the inner world, and was so much broader than the container could
Mm-hmm.
tolerate. Yeah, so he became an analyst, and he still wrestles with theology and in his teachings, training other analysts and everything. And it's really,
Huh.
really beautiful. But he was the wise elder guide, sort of the in some ways he was me before I was me, and could help
Yeah.
along.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then I went to work with Stan Marlin, and I don't know if you've seen, there's a video on YouTube of his office, his library in his home, which is his office.
Uh-huh.
And Stan trained and did his personal analysis with James Hillman,
Mhm.
and
Okay.
he was also with Timothy Leary and Ram Dass during that
Oh
whole
gosh.
era.
Wow.
And he's an amazing character. And but I encourage anyone listening to go find Stan Marlin, Marlan, the video of his library.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Hillman, someone in Hillman's family, I forget the story, but he tells it in the video, uh, had built the exact same library as part of their house. So Stan had no idea. He went there and
Uh-huh.
he loved the house and bought it. And then when Hillman came over, he said, there is a room over here that you can't tell is here unless you go find the door back in the back
Uh-huh.
corner, right? He's like, how did you know? He was like, this is the same exact layout as I think it was his grandfather or uncle or somebody. I don't know. He says who it is in the video. I can't remember, but
Oh,
just
wow.
a crazy synchronicity. Yeah. And
Huh.
working with Stan was great because he's so rooted in I mean, he has PhDs in philosophy and psychology from Duquesne, and
Hmm.
taught at Duquesne for years. And so phenomenology is part of his background as well. And undergrad studies and Buddhist studies. And but his way of thinking about the unconscious is coming from so many angles that it's just, it really can open up
Yeah.
your world and analysis to have someone working with someone who recognizes symbols and can work with symbols and images from angles you'd never think of based on your own prior history and
Right.
lack of experience of certain cultures and that sort of thing. So to see
Wow.
the universal in so many things. And I also worked with Joe McFadden for a while. I don't know if you
Oh,
ever met.
yeah.
He was in,
Mm-hmm. I have met him.
yeah. Yeah, and it was interesting working with Joe because part of the what's unique about the analytic relationship is the transference counter-transference relationship, and in
Mm-hmm.
typical therapies, you're supposed to get rid of that and not participate in that. It's pathological and dangerous and inappropriate and all that. But in
Right.
analysis, that is the work.
Yeah.
When I was working on my cases before graduation, I mean, I was told if unless you're in and staying in the transference, countertransference, you're not doing analysis, you're doing some variation of Jungian informed talk therapy. So
Oh,
it's interesting that it's a particular kind of intimacy.
yeah.
But for me, with Joe was the projection onto him, and I'm sure you'll know what I'm saying from meeting him, that he was some kind of prince that was raised as a prince and was just so above me and superior and all of that stuff,
Uh-huh.
own inferiority stuff, that was projected onto him, and it was so interesting. But that's how you work through things that you bring to analysis, that through
Right.
yeah, recognizing your projections and withdrawing them. Yeah.
Yes.
And then for the past, I guess, 3.5 years, I've been in weekly analysis with James Hollis.
Oh,
And that,
really? Oh,
yeah,
wow.
and that has
Yeah.
been absolutely transformative in ways I don't think would be possible if I hadn't had so much analysis before that.
Yeah.
I'm in my like 14th, 15th year of analysis now.
Wow.
Yeah. And I
That's
read
amazing.
when Oliver Sacks died, I read that he had been in analysis for over 50 years with the same analyst.
Really.
And I thought, I'm going to be a lifer as well because I just believe in the power of it. I don't
Yeah.
necessarily need it per se, but it's so valuable. I don't know why I wouldn't
Right.
keep. Yeah. And it informs how I work in
Mm-hmm.
every area of life.
Yeah.
And
That's
yeah,
powerful
so
stuff.
yeah, working with James, he's so embodies the father archetype in his
Mm-hmm.
writings that when
Mm.
whether they know it or not, when people work with him, that's what they're in. So
Yeah.
he
Ah.
said, let's just go ahead and realize we're going to have this father-son transference, counter-transference thing, and let's just be real conscious of it and work in it. Otherwise,
Yeah.
that's we need to be aware of what's going to happen. And
Right.
yeah, and so not literally the father, but the one who invokes the things in the analysan that happen when you're interacting with someone who's embodying the archetype, which
Mm-hmm.
is just its own brilliant process as well.
Yes.
But yeah, I'm in love with analysis as much as being an analyst.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just I found my thing.
That's awesome. That is so beautiful to really
Yeah,
find what makes your heart sing.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And really, I think probably a lot of us are like this. I found that in becoming a therapist is because I'm always in this place anyway. I'm always
Mm-hmm.
in this place that's kind of halfway in the dark and thinking about the big questions and with somewhat of a heaviness mixed in with the joy and a sense of seriousness and um, curiosity. And so it's like, why would I be doing something else while I'm in this headspace when I could
Yeah.
just be in this headspace as part of what I do? Yeah. 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 So it's my habitat for sure.
Yeah, that's like when I was in my master's program at the Lutheran School of Theology at Chicago, and I was working with my thesis advisor. And at one point, I said something to her like, "Oh, I just feel like I'm working out all of my dysfunctional family trauma crap in my theology." And she's like, "Yes, that's what we all do." You know, you might as
Yeah.
well like just dive into that if that's
Yep.
where you're called and why. I mean, you might not know that's why you're called there, but that's
Yeah.
becomes part of the core part of the whole process, and might as
Yeah.
well just embrace it and
Yeah.
and dive in.
Yeah. And we're all doing it all the time. I remember
Right.
one of the analysts I trained under, Mark Winborn in Memphis. He said we're all reenacting something all
Mm,
the time. It's just how aware we are of it. And
right.
yeah, we're always enacting or reenacting, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think just being conscious of the reenactments as they're happening in real time, that's so often what I encourage my clients to do is to not try to be perfect and stop doing the thing that is part of the reenactment as much as catching themselves doing it in real time and saying out loud, I'm doing the thing right now
Yeah.
in a really
Yeah.
lighthearted way, not an indictment or as
Right.
criticism, but as I'm recognizing in real time what's happening here. And that
Yeah.
that creates more change than any sort of trying to get rid of the quote pathological thing or there's something about just gently bringing that into awareness and being accepting of, yeah, we're human and this is part of what it means to have the human brain and
Right.
interact with other humans. And um, I don't know that guilt necessarily has to enter the equation unless we're harming
Right.
someone or something. Yeah. But to really be gentle with ourselves, because I think some of the most violent places I've ever been in proximity to people's minds, you know?
Wow.
And I
Yeah.
know my own version of that, where,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, there's a lot of things said inside of our minds to ourselves that we'd never say out loud. Or if we
Right.
did, we might go to jail or something, it'd be at least be considered abusive.
Right.
And so, yeah, I
Yeah.
think,
If we heard someone else talking to someone the way we talk to ourselves, we would call out them as abusive.
yeah, yeah. So I'm a real big advocate of not just trying to stop doing that, but to catch it when it's happening and gently say, here I am having this experience that's happening in me, and I'm the only person that can intervene. No one
Yeah.
else really is in a position to be able to. So it's on me. So I think so often, because working with James, he's all about personal responsibility and personal accountability, but it's also in the spirit of I get to do this, and
Mm.
I'm the only person in a position to do this. And then it becomes about self-abandonment or real self-love, which is the not necessarily a feeling, but the constant showing up, just like you would for a child. A child, I think, feels loved when they're complimented and doted on and all that. But I think it's the consistency and showing up that says, you matter so much to me that I'm going to show up for you every day.
Yeah.
That being that's been the most healing part of the work for me is to be in a place that's how I spend my days now. And I definitely don't mean to sound like one of those I've arrived people,
Yeah.
because yeah, I would never claim that, because everybody has their days. But I think
Mm-hmm.
fundamentally now, instead of self division, it's self care,
Mm-hmm.
where I'm think so often in working with clients, I end up at some point saying, how did you end up outside of your own circle of concern?
Oh, wow. That's a
You know,
powerful question.
just get back in it.
Yeah.
That we
Right.
become convinced we're especially bad or especially something not in a good way,
Yeah. Yeah.
unworthy and it's just the internal indoctrination that happens when something happens, someone says something, someone injures us in a way that implies or explicitly says we're not valued, and
Mm-hmm.
that becomes identity because it's so
Right.
painful. It's just on repeat, and there's this internal brainwashing that happens, and painful narratives are a lot louder than the more pleasant ones.
Right.
And and Thich Nhat Hanh actually has a book I think is better than the analytic books I've read on this topic, called Reconciliation.
Ah.
It's a beautiful book. It's all about reconciling with that part of us that we abandoned
Oh,
because
wow.
everybody else did and we didn't know what else to do,
Yeah.
So, yeah,
That sounds amazing.
you're the sensitive child that people uh, don't see that as a gift and see it as a flaw.
Mm-hmm.
Then the internal world becomes, saying to ourselves things that were said to us, and so we abandon, we push away and wish we weren't that way and would get rid of it if we could. And
Mm-hmm.
Thich Nhat Hanh has these exercises in the book, and one of them is just it. I'll get emotional still talking about it, even though I recommend this book at least once a week. But where he's holding his himself as a child, and he's making amends and saying, "I am so sorry that I abandoned you when you needed me the most, but when all the big people did, I didn't know what else to do but to do that too. I didn't have any other
Right.
example of what to do.
Right.
And I wanted to stop hurting, and it seemed like you were the thing drawing attention to me."
Right.
That sort of thing.
Ah.
Yeah. And it's just so beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
heard just in a video, I can't remember now who I was listening to, it was something on YouTube, and I think they might have been referring to Gabor Mate, but saying something about that he had said something like, our trauma is not so much from the event that happened, but it's from the lack of a witness. Because if
Hmm.
we didn't tell someone or no one was there to hear or see, it's the lack of a witness that really does more of the damage because then we we don't witness for ourselves. And if there's no one else it's just that kind of abandonment that
Yeah.
hurts more maybe than the actual experience of the trauma itself. Though certainly that
Hmm.
can be painful and difficult and horrible, but I think if you have a witness, it holds that pain and then heals it at the time. If you have someone able to do that at the time, it may not have the lasting effect
Hmm.
that you feel in your life later on if you didn't have that.
Yeah. Someone, especially someone to name what happened, to not
Mm-hmm.
only see it, but to let you know they saw it and
Right,
and let you know that what happen's not okay
right,
and that it feels bad for a reason. It
right.
was wrong. The action or the whatever the event was damaging
Mm-hmm.
and that you hurt because it was hurtful.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes that can happen when the analyst or the therapist or friend or whoever is the witness. But yeah, having that happen when it happens, because I'm thinking about some of my versions of it. I guess you know we buried my father back in February, and that's
Mm.
very difficult situation in so many ways. But
Yeah.
after after his death, well, about 4 hours before the funeral, I confided in my uncle some things that I held for a long time and never shared in
Mm-hmm.
relation to my father. And the fact that he received it, believed me, was moved to tears,
Oh,
and followed up was the healing that I never would have experienced if he hadn't have shown up in that way.
right.
So it's never too late for a corrective experience,
Mm-hmm.
hopefully,
Mm-hmm.
but I also recall a time as a child when my mom was pretty humiliating in front of a group of people, and one of her friends pulling me aside and saying, "I don't know why she did that, but that's not okay. You're a good kid and you didn't deserve that."
Oh, wow.
And that was an inoculation against what I would have carried from that moment. It
Right.
replaced my narrative with that narrative.
Right.
And
Right.
most of us don't get that, or at least we all have times where that didn't happen, and maybe
Yes.
zero to a handful of times it did.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but you're right that the witness is so important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, let's bring part one to an end, and then I'd like in the next part of our conversation to talk a little bit about re meaning making, and right now in our period of time of this culture of how people are really struggling with meaning making and why Jung is still relevant today in that quest and any other. So I just would love to get into that. So let's pause
yeah.
part one and then we'll jump back into part two.
Sounds good.
Thanks for listening to the first half of this episode. If you'd like to go deeper, click on the link in the show notes to access the full episode for paid subscribers of The Sacred Everywhere on Substack. And if you enjoyed this conversation, please like, subscribe, and share this episode far and wide. I'd love your help to grow this channel. Until next time, may you notice the sacred everywhere. Thanks for being part of this journey. If these conversations matter to you, your membership helps make them possible. Until next time, may you notice the sacred.